Hey, it's Grant from Grant Bakes, and today I'm teaching you how to make these sourdough crescent rolls. These are great with butter and jam, and also plain. You're gonna need 200 grams of sourdough starter for this recipe. So to a jar, add 100 grams of water, room temperature, and then 100 grams of leftover sourdough starter. I usually take this directly from the fridge, so whenever I'm done baking bread, I just put the starter back in the fridge, and that's where I keep it. Then stir that starter and water mixture together before adding the 100 grams of bread flour. I'm actually using Pillsbury bread flour because I'm copying a Pillsbury type of recipe, so just figured why not. 100 grams of flour, stir that all together until the flour and water and starter become the same thing. Just a bunch of starter ready to grow. Top that off with a rubber band and let it rise till it doubles in size. Then once your starter is doubled, it's time to prepare the wet ingredients for this recipe. It's going to start with 53 grams of water, that's about a quarter cup, and then 57 grams of butter, another quarter cup, or half a stick of butter if you live in the US. Then add 46 grams of white sugar, or another quarter cup. Basically what you're going to do is stir together these three wet ingredients and then heat it up in the microwave so that the butter melts and the sugar starts to melt too. That's going to make these ingredients a little bit easier to incorporate with the flour. And even though it doesn't look very appetizing now, it's going to be buttery, sugary, and delicious. Once your starter is doubled in size, or about doubled in size, it's time to throw together the dough. So go ahead and add to a mixing bowl all of the liquid mixture that you just heated up. Then add 1 egg, room temperature or straight from the fridge is fine. Stir that egg into the liquid so the yolk incorporates a little bit. Then add 6 grams of salt. That's about 1 1/4 teaspoons of kosher salt if you're using kosher salt. Then I'm going to get my scale out because the one ingredient I haven't weighed out yet is the starter. So go ahead and add 200 grams of sourdough starter. That's nice, bubbly, and active to the liquid ingredients. Then grab a wooden spoon, a fork, or a metal spoon, whatever you got, and give everything a little mixy mix to mix the starter throughout the liquid. Then to finish off this dough, add 400 grams of bread flour, about 2½ cups if you're going by cups, and stir everything to combine. This will make a drier dough than usual if you're used to making my regular sourdough bread recipe, but I'm going to take this dry dough and actually knead it by hand. I really suggest kneading by hand for this recipe. You can't really do stretch and folds for a dough that's on the drier side. You could use a stand mixer, but I'm choosing to knead by hand. So if you're doing that with me, pour out your dough onto the counter, and it's going to be kind of dry and shaggy. Just knead all of this together. Try to get rid of all the little dry bits of flour. And the thing I like about kneading by hand is you kind of pick up those dry bits of flour with the dough. So you just keep going until everything is picked up, and it forms a relatively smooth dough. That should take somewhere between 5 to 8 minutes. So go ahead and knead. And after about 8 minutes of kneading, this is what your dough should look like. It won't be perfectly smooth, but it should hold together and just be one solid mass of dough. This is going to go through a long bulk fermentation process, and that's going to further develop the gluten a little bit more, and as well as let the dough puff up and rise and build a lot of flavor. So for now, just kind of tighten up the edges of the dough and form it into a smooth ball. Then grab a mixing bowl where the dough can rise. Make sure the bowl is about twice as big as the dough so it has room to puff up. Add some oil or nonstick cooking spray to the bowl, and then spin your dough around in that cooking spray or oil just so everything doesn't stick. And then you can top off the dough with some plastic wrap or a kitchen towel if you so choose, and let it bulk ferment on the counter for 8 to 10 hours. I usually do this part overnight. I make the dough in the evening and then let it ferment all night long, and this is what I get in the morning. A dough that's about doubled in size. It's nice and puffy when I give it a few pokes. If your dough has risen to about double in size like mine, it is now ready to shape and to make your rolls. Alternatively, you can cover it up with plastic wrap or a towel again and pop it into the fridge and then use it whenever you're ready to shape the rolls later. But I am ready to shape them right now, so let me show you how to do that. For this, it's nice to have a rolling pin and a pizza cutter, but you could just use your hands and a knife. Start by flipping the dough out onto the counter. We're going with the smooth side up and the seam side down at first. And just start flattening the dough with your palms and your fingertips, flattening it into a circle, maintaining that circular shape, and trying to flatten it as evenly as possible. Then flip the dough over so it's now seam side up and smooth side down against the counter. This is going to be the final kind of position of the dough. Keep flattening everything, maintaining the circle shape. You're going for about 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch thickness for this circle of dough. Once your dough is pressed down as much as you can with your hands, you can kind of smooth out the edges of the dough with your rolling pin. And the rolling pin is a great tool to use to get rid of some of those uneven areas. So if it's a little bumpy in the middle, give it an extra roll or two with the rolling pin, making sure everything's as even as possible. Next comes the fun part with crescent rolls, and that's cutting them into 8 even pieces and shaping them up. Round dinner rolls, like the ones I made last year, are my favorite, honestly, but these are way more fun to shape. So go ahead and slice these into 8 even triangles, and we'll take it from there. And the great thing about this drier dough, by the way, is that the dough really doesn't stick to the counter very much. I'm able to just put it on the counter with no flour down there at all, if you were wondering why I didn't put any flour on the counter. And there you go, 8 pretty even triangles of dough. So before you're ready to roll your dough up into crescents, make sure you've got a cookie sheet lined with parchment paper or a silicone mat ready to go. Okay, I lied earlier, this is the real fun part, rolling up these triangles into crescent shapes. Take one triangle and pull on the wide end, kind of making those ends stretch out a little bit, and then just start rolling. Keep the crescent tight as you're rolling it up, and the dough will just stick to itself, and you'll have a nice crescent roll shape, just like this. That little tail, as you can see, likes to flop down, so take the tail on the end, maybe flatten it a little bit with your thumb, and then press it in to the rest of the dough. That'll keep that stuck. And then you're gonna place this to proof on the parchment paper with the tail side down against the parchment. And here's another one. I'll just show you one more for good measure. Pull the wide end of the dough, stretching out the ends a little bit, and then roll the dough tightly into itself until you have a nice crescent roll shaped crescent roll. Please, if you're liking this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. That really helps out the channel, and it helps spread this video around, so if anyone is interested in making sourdough crescent rolls for Thanksgiving or whatever holiday, your thumbs up will help them find this video, so thank you. Once your rolls are all shaped, it is now time to let them proof. So make sure they're all on the baking sheet lined with parchment paper or a silicone mat or whatever you got. And also make sure that they're all tail side down, like I mentioned earlier. That tail should be tucked under, pressed down, and just flat against the parchment. That's going to make it so the tail doesn't flip up during the baking process, which will look a little funny. It won't be the end of the world, but this way they'll look a lot more uniform. You should cover up your rolls as they proof, just so they don't dry out on top. I'm using plastic wrap. You can use a different solution if you want to, but this is how I set up my plastic wrap. I actually like to put a little drop of oil on the wrap and totally just wipe it all over the plastic. This way the oil will form a little barrier between the plastic and the rolls, so the rolls don't stick to the plastic wrap. You could actually spray oil onto the rolls, but I find that this method uses less oil in the end. So that's why I oil my plastic and not my rolls. Once your rolls are all covered, it is now time to let them proof. That's going to take anywhere from 6 to 10 hours at room temperature or until they're doubled in size. If you shape your rolls in the morning like I'm doing for this video, they will be ready to bake well before dinner time, so you'll be good to go. I have been out all day, and it's been about 9 hours since I started letting these rolls proof, and here is the result. They're definitely really puffy, about doubled in size, and just giving each of them a little poke, I'm noticing that they're bouncy and delicate to the touch, but not too delicate, so I know they're not overproofed yet. They are perfect and ready to bake. Of course, your rolls might take less time to proof, so whenever they look like this, they are ready to bake. Preheat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, that's roughly 200 degrees Celsius. and then get ready your egg wash. This is an optional step. It's one I like to do sometimes. You can skip it if you want to, but if you want a shiny and kind of dark top to your rolls, I would suggest going with the egg wash. It's just one beaten egg, brush that on top of your proofed rolls. That's going to give them that shiny and kind of dark brown look that just makes it look a little bit extra special. But I'll say again, this is an optional step, so skip it if you want to. If you want something that looks a little bit more similar to a Pillsbury crescent roll, I would skip the egg wash. Your mom was definitely not putting egg wash on her Pillsbury crescent rolls. So if you want something that looks like that, skip this step. It's totally fine. After that, you're going to want to bake these in your 400-degree oven for about 20 to 25 minutes without any steam, no steam necessary. Go for 20 minutes if you want a little bit lighter rolls and 25 minutes if you want them a little bit darker. After about 15 minutes in the oven, I did turn these around just to make sure they're getting evenly browned on both sides. You can do the same thing in your oven if it has some uneven spots, like a lot of home ovens. After their toasty bake in the oven, your sourdough crescent rolls should look something like this. Golden brown and delicious. Definitely a step up, in my opinion, from those blue tube Pillsbury rolls. Go ahead and brush them with some melted butter if you would like to. This is definitely a step that I love to do. It just gives them better flavor and a little extra shine. So I definitely brush the tops of each crescent roll just with a little bit of melted butter. Then you can serve these warm, but I like to move them to a wire rack or a wooden cutting board just to let them rest for about 30 minutes before serving. I find that they're a little better if I wait till they cool down. Then you can serve these however you want. I like them with butter and jam, and here's what they look like on the inside. And of course, it's all personal preference, but I find these more delicious and fluffier and just way better than those Pillsbury rolls that I grew up with as a kid. Serve these however you want. They go great with butter and jam or jelly. They go great with Thanksgiving dinner, family dinner, just dinner with friends. However you want to serve them, these should be your next dinner rolls. Make sure you check out the link in the description for a full written and printable recipe for these rolls. And if you want to make some more traditional round dinner rolls, you can check out my recipe from last year. I'm going to link that in the description and at the top of this video right now. Subscribe to the Grant Bakes YouTube channel for more bread, sourdough, and pizza videos, and I will see you next time.